I will begin the recording of the meeting. I will now take the sediment of the Planning Local Review Body held on 21st November 2022. Following councillors are present: Councillors Alec Allison and Jerry Convery. We have apologies from Councillor Mary Donnelly. Councillor Gladys Fergus-Miller is not in attendance. And the following members are all present: Councillors Mark Horsham, Leslie MacDonald, Richard Nelson, Norman Ray, Dr Ali Salamati and Graham Scott. Thank you, and I'll pass you to the Chair for today's business.
Thank you, Stuart. We'll just go through the agenda items. So agenda item number 1 is any declarations of interest. Councillor MacDonald.
Yes, agenda item 5. I know the applicant.
Thank you very much, Councillor MacDonald. I don't have any items of urgent business, so if you would like to leave the meeting, there's no need for you to come back in after that. Any other declarations of interest? Agenda item number 2, minutes of previous meeting, submitted for approval as a correct record. I'll move that.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 3 is a review of case in respect to planning application P200547, erection of a boundary fence and associated change of use from privately owned open space to private garden ground, retrospective as 74 Vancouver Drive in East Kilbride. The item before us today is a notice of review from Mr Mark Creasy. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the planning officer determination to review an application for retrospective planning permission for the erection of a boundary fence at 74 Vancouver Drive in East Kilbride. The planning advisor will first describe the background to this request for a review to the members, and I'll pass you over to Ian this morning.
Thank you, Chair. Retrospective planning permission is sought for a 1.8 metre high boundary fence and an associated change of use from private ground to enclosed private garden space at 74 Vancouver Drive, East Kilbride. The application site is located within the Westwood area and is bounded by housing to the north and east. The southern boundary is located on Vancouver Drive and western boundary is located on Ontario Park. The land was originally considered to comprise some informal public open space, but the applicant has stated that they are the owner of the whole application site. It is therefore considered that if the land was privately owned, there is no change of use involved in the proposals, and therefore the assessment focuses solely on the fence that has been erected. The fence encloses an area of private land located forward of and to the side of the principal elevation of the dwelling house. The fence is of a timber construction with single vertical slats. Most of the fence has been built on the property boundary with a small section returning at the driveway. Furthermore, as the property has boundaries on Vancouver Drive and Ontario Park, the fence has been erected near the junction between the two roads. The site is located within a residential neighbourhood in East Kilbride and contains a 2-storey end terrace house. The house has a white rough cast render and a pitched roof covered with red roofing tiles. The main entrance to the house is located at the side of the building. The property also has a driveway within the front curtilage, and the site itself is located approximately 200 metres east of East Milton Primary School. In terms of consultation, there was one requested. Roads Development Management had no objections to the proposal as the fence did not interfere with visibility. As noted in the agenda papers, the planning application received 3 letters of objection and 2 letters of comment. The concerns related to the height of the fence and potential effect on road safety. The fence will set a precedent for further applications of this nature. The security offered by the fence and the potential of an alternative solution. In assessing this local review, the local review body are respectively requested to consider that the relevant policies of the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, which are Policy 3, General Urban Areas and Settlements, which states that residential developments on appropriate sites will generally be acceptable. Particular consideration will be given to the likely impacts of the amenity of the area. Developments which would be detrimental to the amenity of residents and the wider community or to the character or the surrounding area will not be permitted. Policy 5, Development Management and Placemaking, which states that in order to ensure developments take account of the principles of sustainable development, all proposals require to be well designed and integrated within the local area. Proposals should have no unacceptable significant adverse impacts on the local community and the environment. And Policy DM1, New Development Design, states that new developments will require to respect the local context and be appropriate to the character and topography of the site in terms of layout, scale, proportion, massing and appearance of buildings, structures and landscaped and hard surface areas. Be of a high quality design which is sympathetic to local traditions of form, detailing and materials. Modern innovative design can reflect local tradition through scale, massing, siting and colour rather than replicating existing building forms. Where local tradition is indistinct or of poor quality, development should be of an imaginative and innovative design which improves the visual quality of the area in which it is located and which creates a strong sense of place. Development should ensure that any archaeological, built heritage, landscape features and nature conservation interests on the site or those adjacent to the site are identified and incorporated into the overall layout and design of the development, with appropriate measures taken to enhance and/or protect the setting of these features. They should address sustainable development issues, including the incorporation of energy-efficient designs and layouts, the reuse or recycling of materials, water and waste, and the use of alternative energy sources. They should incorporate the use of sustainable urban drainage systems where possible, make provision for creating new or extending existing footpaths, cycle routes and access to public transport and appropriate linkages to local centres and services. They should ensure the provision of green infrastructure, including open space and landscaping as an integral part of the development, and ensure provision of an appropriate road layout and parking where appropriate, guiding electric vehicle charging points in accordance with the Council's guidelines of the development roads and the local transport strategy. They should ensure that there is no conflict with adjacent land use and no adverse impact on existing or proposed properties in terms of overlooking loss or privacy, overshadowing, noise or disturbance. They should make provision of any building that the public may use of safe, easy and inclusive access for all people regardless of disability, age or gender. They should incorporate crime prevention and community safety considerations within the layout and design of the development. They should minimise the generation of waste during its construction and operation and be designed to include appropriate provision for the recycling, storage, collection and composting of waste materials once completed and occupied. It is these policies that provide the development plan basis for considering the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ian, the next point for the PLRB to consider and decide is how to proceed with this review. The applicant has requested that further written submissions would be the appropriate method of procedure for this review. Taking account of what is in our papers here, we have to decide if they do in fact contain sufficient information for us to determine the review today, or if we need more written information, a hearing or a site visit. I think that all the information that we have, plus the detailed photographs in our pack, does provide us with all we need to consider this review without either a site visit, a hearing or further written submission. All agreed? Agreed. Agreed, thank you. I'll open this review for discussion. Any discussion points?
Chair.
Oh, you're on, Chair.
Okay.
Councillor Condon.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I've got real reservations because, and by the way, I've got to declare that I represent the ward, and I've looked at this on several occasions. And what it beggars belief. The roads department have got no objections from a roads point of view, but they think the fence shouldn't be there because it's detrimental to the immediate area. There's 5 fences the same height within 20 feet of one another in that area. So it's custom and practice have allowed it. Also, the ground at the side, which is a large chunk of ground, South Lanarkshire Council sold that guy that land, and it's his land now. So we're all over the place as far as I'm concerned. I've looked at the fence. The fence is well constructed. There's been a lot of thought put into it. And I would be opposing it if Rhodes had objected. Rhodes never objected to it. They're saying from a Rhodes point of view it's perfectly fine, but they think it's not in keeping with the area. That's not a Rhodes. That's the Rhodes people are not there to decide whether a fence is right for the area or no. There's 4 fences, I say, in proximity, about 20 feet away, exact same height as the fence that the guy's built. It's a huge fence because it takes in a huge bit of ground that this council sold. So I couldn't, in all sincerity, I could not vote no to allow the fence to stay because this guy spent probably a lot of money putting that fence up. And nobody at the time came forward for this council to say, no, that wasn't right, because they obviously saw it getting built. So I would say we should, at the very least, have a hearing to talk about this with the applicant, because I don't think some of our officers have done their job right, and I'm being perfectly frank.
Thank you, Councillor Conver. Bring in Councillor Horsham.
Thanks very much, Chair. I agree with Jerry on this. Looking at the area, OK, the fences that in that area are to the rear of the buildings, but they are visible. They are on streets as well. They're the same height, same construction. So I'm certainly echo Jerry's points as well. It is in keeping with the character of the area. It doesn't matter if the fence is at the rear or at the front. The fact is that the other fences that are there are facing and clearly visible to members of the public. So, yeah, I completely agree with what Jerry's saying there.
Thank you, Councillor Horsham. Just one question, Ian. It says that the fence is incongruous to the open plan nature of the surrounding area, resulting in a negative visual impact. But from what I've heard from a local member that there is actually fences of similar nature to that. So, is it in keeping with the area?
Thank you, Chair. I wouldn't want to pass comment on the merits of the case, obviously. What I would say is that we have open plan areas officially where conditions have been applied on planning consents. I can only assume that, and this is my own personal opinion, that the view in this case was that because the fence was situated on a bend, on a prominent corner, slightly, with part of it slightly in front of the house, that would be the reason why the council officer decided that it was it conflicted with the open plan appearance of the area. I think it's yourself, Councillor Combry and Councillor Horsham have mentioned that there are other fences there, but they are to the rear of the property, so therefore they wouldn't be in the open plan area, whereas any part of a fence that would be forward of the building line would be considered to be an open plan area.
Thanks, Ian. That's helpful. Thanks for answering that. I'll bring in Councillor Salamati online. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I must say I concur with Councillor Combry and Horsham. In this regard, I looked at the site plan. Looks like another house, another fence is similar situation, just another corner on number 1 in another very close proximity. And as Councillor Combry mentioned, we sold the land, and the guy is entitled to the kind of protect his land, from undesirables if it's not open, kind of thing, public land. My understanding of reading the notes is that if the fence was like a 1 meter high, there was no problem. The main problem seemed to be the 1.8 meter high. Is that correct? If I can ask the officer, please.
Ian, do you mind answering?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Salmati. If the fence had been 1 metre in height, it wouldn't have actually required planning permission. It would have been permitted development. The fact that it's 1.8 metres high obviously means that it needs planning permission, and that is been the main reason, as it would appear from the papers, as to why the fence has been refused. It's been considered that it was in a prominent location at that height, and as I say, that's why the council officer chose to refuse it. But if it had been no higher than a metre in height, it wouldn't have actually needed planning permission.
So, may I come back?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So the location and all of these, things, it's having a 1 meter, perimeter fence in his property or his land is not really a problem. It's the main thing is that 800, additional on top of the 1 meter, which seems to be creating the point of, dominance or, the not having any precedence in the area. But I had look at this, on the Google map, and like my colleagues, I've seen, the many other examples around within the area. And I would say, it feels unfair. Some of the neighbors have it, and only this one is being, objected to. Unless I'm mistaken, I would, agree with the points of Councillor Conway and Horsham on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Salamati. If there are no further discussions, can I just summarise the points? Just 2 seconds. Just to summarise the points, the application is for retrospective plan permission for the erection of a boundary fence at 74 Vancouver Drive in East Kilbride. The adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 identifies the site as being within the settlement boundary of East Kilbride. If we consider that the retrospective fence proposal does have a significant detrimental impact on visual amenity as a result of its layout, scale and positioning, and therefore would not accord with Policy 3, 5 and DM1 of South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, permission can be refused. Or, if we consider that the proposed development does not have a significant detrimental impact on visual amenity, we could grant planning permission consent. Our options here today are uphold or reverse, vary the planning determination. Can I invite any decisions? Councillor Convery.
Chair, could I just clarify a couple of points for colleagues that don't know the area? I mean, the argument is that the fence is of 1 metre, what is it, Ian, sorry, 1.8 high. When you come along Vancouver Drive, you cut into Ontario Park, the first 2 houses on the right-hand side of Ontario Park, 2 fences which face on to the road, but not the way this house does, are 1.8 metres high. Across the road, there's another fence, it's 1.8 metres high. When East Kilbride was built in the way back in the early 50s, yes, East Kilbride Development Corporation had a policy of no fences. It was all open plan. You were not allowed to put a fence up by basically the law of the land at the time. If you go around East Kilbride, and I've lived in East Kilbride 40 odd years, there's fences everywhere in East Kilbride, everywhere in East Kilbride. And I just think it's double standards. This thing's been up for over 2 years, and I just don't see why, when the planning officer was out, he saw the 2 fences which are adjacent. They're not at the back. Mark makes the point, there's fences at the back, yes, but there's 4 fences in the radius of 20 feet away from when that guy built that fence. And I know the history of the fence because Mr. Joe Allen, who unfortunately was one of the signatories to oppose it, and I was at Joe's funeral, those fences were up in that fence, wasn't he? So the guy only done what he saw adjacent to what was already there. So I don't know why we never asked the guy to maybe cut it down a wee bit. There's been no dialogue with this guy, as far as I'm concerned. It's a matter of, it's no in keeping, the fence is no in keeping, and I reiterate to my colleagues, the roads department are saying there's no a roads issue. So if there's no a roads issue with the roads department, what's the issue? The guy's got the same height of fence as his neighbours. And so, if it was, we were objected to that, how did we not object to the other 2 that are still there?
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Horsham.
I think it's correct what Jerry's saying. Now, Ian, you're saying that if it was 1 metre high, then I think that would look out of place in the area. you know, compared to every other fence, which is 1.8 metres high. So having it 1 metre wouldn't be in character with the area when all the other fences are taller. So this does look in place with the other fences.
Ian?
Thank you, Chair. The reason I raised that, Councillor Horsham, was just to outline the rules. Obviously, the applicant could have come in at a fence of a height between 1 metre and 1.8 if they'd chosen to. It's just that they would have also needed planning permission for that.
Councillor Convery?
Chair, yeah, I would like to try and get a compromise here that suits everybody. Could I ask, Chair, through you, could we not ask the planning department to go back out and have a sit down with the gentleman in question to see at a certain bit could they lower it right at the corner? Because as I say, and I keep reiterating it, roads are saying there's no a roads issue, but they had an issue with the fence. That's not their job. Their job's to go out and look at the road.
Thank you, Councillor Convery.
Thank you.
Monica, can I just ask you just to clarify if that's competent to ask that at this point? And I'll bring in Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. In terms of the PLRB procedure, the PLRB can determine at any point if they require further information. I would remind the PLRB, though, that we already have made the decision today that we've taken the view that no further procedure is required and that you have sufficient information to make your determination today. The other point I would raise in relation to that is I do understand that there were discussions with the applicant and the planning officer in relation to changes to the application, and the view of the applicant was that he required the fence to be this height, and therefore there wasn't an opportunity for negotiation between the parties. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Monica. I'll bring in Councillor McDonald.
Thanks, Chair. It's a question for you, Ian, unfortunately. Can you just confirm to me that you can build a fence that's 1 metre high, but I can't go any taller than that? Is that basically what you're saying? Or is that just at the front of the house and it could be taller at the back?
Ian? Thank you.
That's correct, Councillor MacDonald. There are a few sort of bespoke reasons why you can't do it. In general terms, a fence that is no higher than 1 metre at the front of a principal elevation does not require planning permission. If it's in the rear or behind the principal elevation, it can go up to 2 metres in height. There are situations, a lot of modern housing estates have conditions on them, like Councillor Convery was referring to in the early days of East Kilbride. They have open plan conditions, but that's specific to that development. There are also a number of estates where your title deeds prevent you from doing it, but in planning terms you can do it. Yes, it's to do with the being in front of the principal elevation. That's where the rule kicks in. It's partly for aesthetics, I think, but it's also for roads visibility. That's the reason why the rule was made.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Salamati online, and then I'll bring this to a close. Councillor Salamati.
Yeah, thank you very much for allowing for me to come back. I noticed part of that front elevation, which dominate the front of the building, is there is a recess, which there are certain services there, which the guy made a recess. And I've noticed the actual building is quite high up from the street level, and the kind of effective, height of fence from where inside the property seems to be, not much more than 1 meter. But looking at all these aspects, it's only a few meters, which is on one side, seems to be outside the, the acceptable rules for my colleagues in planning. In looking overall with the character of area, and it doesn't seem to be, if you lower the fence, in just a couple of meters of the full fence, quite a substantial length of fence, doesn't seem to be, the kind of, the very practical, or put it, there is a gate over there and there is a gap between the gate and, that recess area is just a couple of meters. And as Jerry mentioned, the road department doesn't, object to that. And I think considering all of these, it's just one of the unique, kind of situation. I would just be content if the decision of the, colleagues in planning department is reversed.
Thank you, Councillor Salamati. Okay. As I said, our options are to uphold, reverse or vary the decision of the planning. It is my intention to propose that we vary this and we allow the 1 metre fence at the front and to continue with the garden space at the back of the 1 metre 8.
I'll second that, Chair, as a compromise. It's still keeping the fence, but it's conforming.
Is any member otherwise minded? Agreed? Agreed.
Chair, can I just, first of all, clarify if that conditions okay in planning terms?
I'll just check with Ian. Okay.
Yep.
Through you, Chair, I just wanted to clarify that you're looking then to grant the consent subject to a condition, so effectively reversing the decision of the planning authority rather than varying it in this instance.
Yeah, if that's the right terminology, Monica, then yeah, so yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chair. And just it might be helpful if the planning advisor just narrates the condition for the purposes of the minute. Thank you, Chair.
So the proposal would be to that any part of the fence forward of the front building line would be to a height of 1 metre, with the remaining section of the fence retained at a height of 1.8 metres.
Yeah, that's correct, Ian.
Thanks, Ian. Also, Chair, can I just clarify the grounds for which you're proposing to reverse a decision and grant subject to condition? Thank you.
The grant is it faces in with other fences round about the local area, and it's a decision of this PLRB to take that decision.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just clarify, is anyone otherwise minded?
No, thank you. Okay. Therefore, it is the decision of this PLRB to grant the planning permission. As stated already, the next stage is that a written decision notice will be issued by the PLRB, and this should be issued within 28 days. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4, review of case in respect of planning application P211639, erection of outbuilding within the rear curtilage of N Terrace House and associated change of use from private recreational garden space to commercial hairdressing business retrospective of 5 Kenmare Terrace in Hamilton. The item before us today is a notice of review from Paige Copeland on behalf of Leanne Marshall. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the planning officer's determination to refuse an application for planning permission in retrospect for the erection of an outbuilding within the rear curtilage of an end terrace house and an associated change of use from private recreational garden space to commercial hairdressing business. The planning advisor will first describe the background to this request for a review to the members. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the planning officer's determination to refuse an application for planning permission for the erection of an outbuilding within the rear curtilage of an end terrace house and an associated change of use from private recreational garden space for a commercial hairdressing business. That's retrospective at 5 Kenmare Terrace, Hamilton. The site is located within the urban area. The applicant seeks detailed planning consent for the erection of an outbuilding in the rear curtilage of a domestic property for use as a commercial hairdressing business. The property is the end of a row of property of 4 houses within an established residential area of Hamilton. The street is a cul-de-sac and therefore not a thoroughfare for any other traffic other than residents. The application is in retrospect, and the outbuilding has been constructed using timber with patio doors at the front elevation. The hairdressing use proposed is to operate on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and Saturday with approximately 3 to 4 clients a day. In terms of consultations, there were 2 requested. Roads Development Management had no objections due to existing parking provision being acceptable. Environmental Services also had no objections. As noted in the agenda papers, the planning application received 10 letters of objection from 9 properties. The concerns related to noise, road safety, loss of privacy, late night activity, potential impact on property values, title deeds stating that no business could be carried out at the premises. There had been police involvement, there was an attempt to rent the salon out, there was a lack of health and safety insurance, and that the business was working through the COVID-19 lockdown. In assessing this local review, the local review body are respectively requested to consider the following relevant policies of the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, which are Policy 3, General Urban Areas and Settlements, which states that residential developments on appropriate sites will generally be acceptable. Particular consideration will be given to likely impacts on the amenity of the area. Developments which would be detrimental to the amenity of residents in the wider community or the character of the surrounding area will not be permitted. Policy 5, Development Management and Placemaking, which states that in order to ensure development takes account of the principles of sustainable development, all proposals require to be well designed and integrated within the local area. Proposals should have no unacceptable significant adverse impacts on the local community and the environment. Potential DM1, New Development Design, Policy DM1, New Development Design, which states that proposals should respect the layout, context and be appropriate to the character and topography of the site in terms of layout, scale, proportion, massing and appearance of buildings, structures and landscaped and hard surfaced areas. We have a high quality design which is sympathetic to local traditions of form, detailing and materials. Ensure that any archaeological, built heritage, landscape features and nature conservation interests on the site or those adjacent to the site are identified and incorporated into the overall layout. Should address sustainable development issues, including the incorporation of energy efficient designs and layouts. Should incorporate the use of sustainable drainage systems, make provision for creating new or extending existing footpaths, cycle routes and access to public transport and appropriate linkages to local centres and services. They should ensure the appropriate provision of green infrastructure, including open space and landscaping as an integral part of the development. They should ensure provision of an appropriate road layout and parking and, where appropriate, electric vehicle charging points. Ensure that there is no conflict with adjacent land use and no adverse impact on existing or proposed properties in terms of overlooking, loss of privacy, overshadowing, noise or disturbance. They should make provision for any building that the public may use of safe, easy and inclusive access for all people regardless of disability, age or gender. They should incorporate crime prevention and community safety considerations within the layout and design of the development. Should minimise the generation of waste during its construction and operation and be designed to include appropriate provision for the recycling, storage, collection and composting of waste materials once completed and occupied. Policy DM12, Working from Home, which states that the need for planning permission for proposals to use part of a dwelling for commercial use depends on whether a material change of use in the property would occur. Where it is determined that the proposal constitutes a material change of use and requires planning permission, the planning application shall comply with the following: that there will be no adverse impact on the residential amenity of neighbouring properties in terms of noise, disturbance, smell and dirt generated by the business or by members of the public visiting the premises. There will be no adverse impact on traffic or public safety resulting from traffic generated by the use. There is provision for satisfactory car parking and servicing facilities. There will be no adverse impact on neighbours caused by activities taking place outside normal working hours and at weekends. Any required storage of materials or vehicles is satisfactorily accommodated on the site without any adverse impact on neighbouring properties. It is these policies that provide the development plan basis for considering the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. The next point for the PRB to consider and decide is how to proceed with this review. The applicant's agent has requested that further written submissions, one or more hearing sessions and or a site inspection would be the appropriate method of procedure for this review. Taking account of what we have in our papers, we have to decide if they do in fact contain sufficient information for us to determine this review today, or if we need more written information, a hearing or a site visit. I think that all the information we have, plus the detailed photographs, does provide us with all we need to consider this review without either a site visit, hearing or further written submissions. All agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Do the members therefore agree that we can proceed without a site visit, hearing or additional information? Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. We can then proceed to review. I'll open the review for any discussion points. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wanting to clarify a couple of points. I was wondering, I assume that this, what we're deciding here, relates both to the change of use and to the construction of the building itself, and therefore to uphold the decision would mean that the building would have to be removed. I'm asking that because I noticed that the building had been sort of assessed as being suitable for the location, and I suppose the sort of extension from that would be: could this body in theory decide to turn down the change of use but approve the building so that the building could remain, because I noticed that the applicant had said they used it for sort of household activities as well as for the business. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. The building doesn't need to come down. It's only the planning application for the business, for the business alone. So although the business would cease if the planning permission is refused, the building can actually stay as it is. But I'll let Ian answer it from a planning perspective, because he'll be able to give you a wee bit more than I can. So I'll bring in Ian.
That's absolutely correct, Chair. The building would stay, Councillor Ray. It would be allowed to be utilised as a normal domestic building. It's the commercial activity that's the issue here. So the commercial activity would have to cease if the appeal was dismissed, but the building could remain.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. If there's no further discussion points, can I just summarise the points that have been made then? The application is for planning permission in retrospect for the erection of an outbuilding within the rear curtilage of an end-terrace house and associated change of use from private recreational garden space to commercial hairdressing business. The adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 identifies the site as being within the settlement boundary of Hamilton. If we consider that there is no valid policy justification to support the use of the outbuilding as a commercial hairdressing business at this location, and it would not accord with policies 3.5 DM1 and DM12 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, permission can be refused. Or, if we consider that there is adequate justification for the location of the proposed dwelling houses, we could grant planning consent subject to conditions. Our options here today are to uphold, reverse or vary the planning determination. Can I invite any decisions or reasons? Nobody? Are members minded then to uphold the officer's decision to refuse planning permission?
Agreed.
Yes. Agreed. Anyone else otherwise minded? No. Therefore, the decision of the PLRB is to refuse planning permission as we are satisfied that the proposed development would be contrary to 3.5 DM1 and DM12 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. The next stage is that a written decision notice will be issued by the PLRB, and this should be issued within 28 days. Thank you. And we will now move on to agenda item 5, and Councillor MacDonald has declared an interest. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Thank you. Agenda item number 5. Review of case in respect of application, plan application P210909, subdivision of garden ground to form house plot for a 2-storey dwelling house, plan permission in principle of 17 Rosebank Avenue in Blantyre. The item before us today is a notice of review from Glenadveit Projects on behalf of Mr Eddie McNeill. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the planning officer determination to refuse an application for planning permission in principle for the subdivision of garden ground to form a house plot for a 2-storey dwelling house. First of all, I'm going to ask the planning advisor to describe the background to this request for a review to members. And I'll bring in Ian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The applicant seeks planning permission in principle for the subdivision of garden ground to form a house plot for a 2-storey dwelling house. The application site is bounded to the north and east by open space and woodland planting, and to the south and west by residential properties. Whilst the application is for planning permission in principle, an indicative plan has been submitted with the application showing the footprint of a detached dwelling house and a detached garage, both located to the rear of the existing detached bungalow on the site. The proposed dwelling would be positioned approximately 21 metres from the existing house, and it is envisaged by the applicant that the principal rooms would have their main aspect to the north and east and south to minimise overlooking. It is proposed that the new dwelling would be 2 storeys in height with a pitched roof and orientated in the same direction as the existing house. The existing front garden and parking area would remain in place for use of the existing dwelling. The rear garden for the existing dwelling would measure approximately 11 metres in depth. The existing garage, which fronts onto Rosebank Avenue, would be removed to allow for a shared hard surface refuge and recycling collection point. This area would be enclosed with a brick wall and offer the opportunity for signage to the proposed house. The occupiers of the proposed house would require to take their bins to this area for collection from the dedicated storage located adjacent to their parking area. A new double garage for the existing house would be located adjacent to the refuge collection point. An access ramp and driveway and an area of structured planting would be shared by both plots. The remainder of the site would be given to the proposed dwelling. A new double garage and dedicated parking area with a planted buffer zone would be provided to create a defined edge between the 2 plots, with the existing access strip from Rosebank Avenue upgraded to create dedicated access to the proposed plot mentioned above. The area to the north would be cleared and planted with new fencing and the proposed garden boundary. The existing brick wall to the neighbouring property at 2527 Rosebank Avenue would be retained and repaired where necessary. In terms of consultations, there were 6 requested. The Biodiversity Officer had no objections subject to conditions. There were also no objections from Countryside and Green Space, Scottish Water and Environmental Services. Roads Development Management had no objections subject to conditions related to parking, and there was no response received from Arboricultural Services. As noted in the agenda papers, the planning application received 1 letter of objection. The concerns related to the fact that the postcode did not appear to be correct, the concerns that the adjoining boundary wall will collapse during construction, there would be a potential loss of privacy, any construction work would damage a private road which is currently maintained by residents, and that there would be potential problems with drainage and sewerage access. In assessing this local review, the local review body are respectively requested to consider the following relevant policy of the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan, which relates to the policy DM3, the subdivision of garden ground, which states that the development of a new house or houses within the curtilage of an existing house will only be considered where it can be demonstrated that the proposal complies with the following criteria. Number 1, the proposed house or houses are of a scale, massing, design and material sympathetic to the character and pattern of development in the area and does not result in a development that appears cramped, visually obtrusive or is of an appearance which is out of keeping with the established character or is harmful to the amenity of the area. The proposed house plot and that remaining to the existing house are comparable with those nearby in terms of size, shape and amenity, and accords with the established pattern of development in the surrounding area. The proposed house should have a proper road frontage of comparable size and form to surrounding curtilages, unless the proposal reflects the development pattern of the area. The proposed vehicular access is of an adequate standard and will not have adverse implications for traffic safety or adversely affect the amenity of adjacent properties by virtue of noise or loss of privacy. The garden space allocated to the proposed house and that remaining for the existing house should be sufficient for the recreational and amenity needs of the occupants. The proposed development will not cause an unacceptable reduction in privacy to existing houses and will itself enjoy a level of privacy comparable with surrounding dwellings. The proposed development will not overshadow adjacent properties to a degree which results in a significant loss of amenity for residents or is significantly adversely affected by overshadowing. All existing features such as trees, hedges, walls, fences and buildings that contribute to the character of the area should be retained and should not be adversely affected by the development. Adequate parking for both the proposed and existing house must be provided within the site and must not be harmful to the established character and amenity of the area. And finally, the proposal must not jeopardise or be prejudicial to any future development proposals in the vicinity. It is this policy that provides the development plan basis for considering the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. The next point for the PLRB to consider and decide is how to proceed for this review. The applicant has indicated that they are content for the review to proceed on the basis of review documents only, with no further procedure. Taking account of what is in our papers, we have to decide if they do in fact contain sufficient information for us to determine the review today, or if we do need more written information, a hearing or a site visit. I think that all the information we have, plus the detailed photographs we have, does provide us with all we need to consider this review, without either a site hearing, visit, or any further written submissions. All agreed?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed, thank you. Do the members therefore agree that we can proceed without a site visit, hearing or additional information? All agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. I'll open the review for any discussion. Okay, can I just summarise the points? The application is for planning permission in principle for the subdivision of garden ground to form a house plot for a two-storey dwelling house. The adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 identifies the site as being within the settlement boundary of Blantyre. If we consider that there is no valid policy justification to support the principle of a dwelling house at this location and it would not accord with policy DM3 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, permission can be refused. Or, if we consider there is adequate justification for the location of the proposed dwelling houses, we could grant planning consent subject to conditions. Our options are uphold, reverse or vary the planning determination. Can I invite any decisions?
Uphold.
Are members minded to uphold the officer's decision to refuse planning permission?
Agreed.
Agreed. Anyone otherwise minded? No. Therefore, the decision of the PLRB is to refuse planning permission as we are satisfied that the proposed development would be contrary to DM3 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. The next stage is that a written decision. Notice will be issued by the PLRB and this should be issued within 28 days. Thank you. Agenda item number 6. I don't have any items of urgent business. Thank you all for your attendance. Have a safe day and I will ask the clerk to stop the recording of the meeting. Thank you.
Chair.
Cheers, Stuart. Thank you. Aye.
If you know an item, I'll just let
Oh no, Ben, I'll be here. I'll be here.
just get up and get the
I'll be here. I was going to hang about for that. Hang about, I said to Alan, I'm not hanging about that.
What, to hold 3?
I'm not doing it. I'm going away.
Don't away.
I know. I said to Alan,
Get a copy of the slides.
aye, I'm not hanging about. I'm just...
It's not going to be for this.